Before I begin, I just want to ask that you don't go attack Groovy K, do not dislike Bowman's video, don't do anything like that after this discussion. I'm making this because I thought it would be fun, and because I disagree with some things that he said in his debunk video, obviously. Groovy is fully entitled to his opinion, as anyone else is to this matchup. Now, with that out of the way, let's begin. Hey guys, it's Plozible here, and today we're going to be doing a debunk of a Sonic vs. Flash debunk. Sonic vs. Flash debunked if you will. So, I wanted to just say a few things before this video begins. First of all, thank you for the massive amount of support that's been coming into my channel the past week. I've been dead for a long time, and my channel actually managed to get a good boost from that Sonic vs. Flash video. It's my highest performing video, and I managed to get like 20 subscribers from it, so that is always a good boost. But also, before I begin the video, I also want to talk about, just in general, I really do think Groovy did a good job on his video. Now, I don't agree with some of his points, most of them in fact, but I think that he did a really good job at being formal. And the problem with a lot of these debunk videos is that people don't really think out what they're saying, and they're not really replying to what the death battle claimed. They're just going like, oh well, X character can do this and that, so that means that they win, rather than looking at the other side. But I do think that Groovy tried to look at both sides, and I will give him credit for that. So, Groovy, you get a thumbs up from me. But again, with all that out of the way, let the video begin. I can't say I fully agree with this. Now, if we take their normal speeds, I would agree that they are pretty much relative. If you want some context for some speed feats I'm about to bring up, I would go watch my prediction video and go to the speed segment. Wally and Sonic do universe crossing feats or skill to them that are done potentially across infinite space. They have shown to move through time or surpass it with their speed, and the list goes on. Wally's typical usage of the Speed Force would be around Sonic, but I do think a peak Wally would have a far better showing of speed than even a peak Sonic with all of his forms. Now, I did bring this up in the prediction video, but Wally ran so fast one time that he outran Light, Thought, and even the Speed Force. Yeah, the very thing that powers him. What makes this feat so impressive is that the Speed Force is a realm that is transcendent to linear time as well. It exists above the Bleed, which is a 5th dimensional structure. Higher dimensions are kinda wonky, but I just put it like this. Part of the reason we talk about how their speed is immeasurable is because the speed equation, which is distance divided by time equals speed, cannot even begin to measure feats like this. They are moving beyond even time frames. I basically just put this as, since Wally can outrun a 5th dimensional Speed Force, his movement has even less restraint than Sonic's because it's an entire dimension higher. If you want a better explanation of this, you could probably look at a video on just how crazy higher dimensions can get. I'm mainly getting into this territory because Groovy and Speedster are aware of what they're talking about when it comes to the dimensions themselves, so if I could talk about this, they probably are aware of what higher dimensional speed is. With that being said, next point.
Death Battle stated in their analysis that he could do it in an instant, and I have not seen one time in the comics where that was a thing. He might have been able to start it up instantly, but not take all of their kinetic energy like they claimed in the Death Battle.
One thing I should clarify is that it's nice that one of the people has a dedication to reading the Flash comics, but it's not much of a debunk to Death Battle's point if you just don't remember it. Instead, we should look at the example Death Battle brings up whenever they're talking about Wally.
To touch, Wally can steal another speed and use it for himself.
The feat they are talking about here is when Lady Flash had all of her speed stolen instantly the moment Wally raced past her. However, Speedster does bring this up as the only example he can really think of later, so I suppose that they did somewhat address this point. The counter-argument he offered was that it was different because he was stealing the Speed Force out of her rather than directly stealing the kinetic energy. The problem with this argument though is the scan is clearly referring to the kinetic energy. First off, one of the lines of dialogue clarifies he channeled the Speed Force to lend energy to objects and people. While he has used this on other speedsters, he's also lent his speed to non-Speed Force users like Wonder Woman. This matters because he's connecting it to his stealing, which would be the opposite of his lending. Both are done from the same method of manipulating his or someone else's kinetic energy though. What I'm getting at here is that there really isn't much of a difference in between just doing this to Speed Force users or people without the Speed Force. Additionally, Wally noted that he could steal all of Superman's speed, and his implication makes it seem like he could do so very quickly as well. Even in the case he couldn't do it instantly, he stolen speed on a planetary scale when he funneled kinetic energy of the people of Earth across the universe to amplify himself. Stealing speed from Sonic shouldn't be an issue for him. I actually don't have anything to say about how this video addresses the Quantum Dial feat. I pretty much agree with what they're saying here, and this was actually one of my problems with the death battle. They also brought up how using anti-feats isn't the best way to represent Sonic either. This is something I agree with, or else we could easily do the same thing for Wally and go on for days. Unfortunately, the streak of being right kind of ends past this point.
It's something that transcends time and space. It's actually fifth dimensional. This is proven through the scan right here, which says that Chaos Knuckles with the Chaos Force was able to be above time and space. That means that the Chaos Force, which is where all Chaos Energy originates from, is 5D. It's above time and space, so that's how we know that Chaos Energy is actually above that, and it's not something that's actually physical. It's something that's kind of spiritual, kind of magical, but not like specifically physical.
Part of this is right, and part of this is very wrong. So they are right about the fact that the Chaos Energy isn't purely physical, however, not all Chaos Energy is automatically fifth dimensional. What he's talking about is this place called the Chaos Force, which is above space and time. Not only is it outside of time and space though, but it is consistently established as a higher plane of existence. The issue is that not every use of Chaos Energy is on that scale though. There are plenty of examples where base characters are able to endure Chaos Energies in their fights that would contradict this notion for one. But secondly, the Chaos Force is the purest form of Chaos Energy. Most outputs of it are from people acting as conduits to expel things like Chaos Control or Chaos Spear. Things like Chaos Emeralds or Power Rings are needed to have even more potent usage of it, and those things aren't even close to the full capabilities of the Chaos Force.
The Chaos Force is a fifth-dimensional plane of existence, and when Sonic accidentally caused the multiverse to collapse in on itself, he affected the Chaos Force, meaning his reality warping reached the fifth dimensional plane of existence. So that 4D form is not going to protect him from Sonic's Chaos Control.
That's part of what they said, but they know that Wally has shown the ability to phase through reality warping energy in the past regardless.
Wally could phase through reality warping energy!
Something that would further defend this point is that Wally was actually not only able to withstand the effects of sixth-dimensional reality warping forces against him, but he was able to vibrate within it as well. Even in the event the Super Genesis Wave is fifth-dimensional, Wally would have feats of resisting and vibrating in higher degrees of reality warping against him.
This would actually work. I won't knock him for that, but they make it seem like it's something that Sonic's weakened to, like he's weak to time attacks or something like that. But I have to remind you guys that Sonic can time travel too. We see in his ultrasonic form, in fact, the fact that he was in the ultrasonic form should have even made him more able to time travel, because we see that in this comic right here, with ultrasonic, he's able to move forward in time. In fact, he's able to move forward in time, even make the planet move forward in time. So the fact that he has these time travel powers by using his speed shows that he can do the same thing that the Flash can do. Now, I'm not saying that the Flash can't go forward in time and prevent Sonic. That's just one scenario. But the fact that Sonic can do that himself, along with other things that the Flash can do, I don't think it's something that really needs to be included in the battle.
In the end credits, they act like Flash would know that Sonic's super form has a time limit, even though he's never met Sonic or anything's been hinted about him even knowing about Sonic. But the same thing could be said about Sonic and his Ring of Knowledge. He could use that to learn about the Speed Force, learn about Wally's abilities, and he can also time travel and literally do the same thing. They use that as one of their arguments, and I just didn't find that to be a really good reason of saying why they thought Wally would win, because Sonic could literally do the same thing.
The reason they brought up Flash's time travel was not only because he had it, but it was also because he had a more useful extent to it than Sonic does. Wally, when traveling through the time stream, is able to view different moments of someone's life while going through it. This extends to knowing a time passage, as he can count down the number of years he's traveled forward to. This is also why Flash wouldn't even have to know that Supersonic has a duration behind it. The moment he travels through time, that's something he would immediately notice and take advantage of. They already mentioned how his cosmic awareness would tell him anyway, so Wally's going to know one way or another. Sonic's time travel, from what we know, doesn't really have this advantage to it. So while they do have the same kind of ability, it hardly matters if one use of it is clearly better than the other. They also mention that Sonic could use a power ring to learn about Wally's abilities, which isn't technically wrong. However, there isn't much of a circumstance this could be used, because Sonic has to ask it. Also, the only time he's used it for that was a moment where it knocked him back and it temporarily overloaded his head with information to make him dizzy. Sonic asking about those abilities would only give Wally a clean opening to overwhelm him. Groovy then brings up this point that Super Sonic is nigh omnipresent because he'd have to be everywhere in the present to fight Slar as his time is constantly flowing. My problem with that is that there really isn't much to contextually support this. Not only that, but it's also not supported beyond the mention of Sonic 06 in the comic to make it consistent whatsoever. I'd factor it out of the discussion personally because it's not consistent enough to actually use.
So, we got into contact with a researcher from Death Battle, and he talked to us a little bit about the fight itself. He mentioned that Wally is beyond 5D, and the proof actually lies within the Speed Force. So, both of us originally thought that the Speed Force was only 4D because of this scan that you see right here with Mr. Mixie Pixel talking about all the dimensions in the world. He was talking about the 5th dimension, and as you can see, it's above everything else, which includes the Speed Force and the bleed and whatnot. So we thought that it was actually 4D. But we see this new scan here which retcons this statement, and it says that the bleed is actually rotating around the 5th dimension. That means that the bleed is 5th dimensional, and we already know that the Speed Force is above the bleed, which means that Wally is technically beyond 5D. This is the reason why they made Wally win the fight.
Now, it was shown 2 times where Wally was facing something 6-dimensional, that he couldn't stay on that plane for long or interfere with it. However, he can still go into the Speed Force and be in a 6-dimensional plane. I'm assuming he's able to go to that plane despite it being 6-dimensional because it's where he gets his powers from. Any other plane of existence he's tried to go to that was on a 6-dimensional plane, it's been said he can't go there, or at least for long.
I have a few things to correct here that were said about the DC cosmology. First of all, the Speed Force isn't necessarily 6-dimensional just because it's above the bleed. It could easily be higher into the 5th dimension than what the bleed is. That's not really the problem I have with this portion though, I'm just fixing that up because it's a matter of technicality. The one problem I have is how they treat the 5th dimension and the 6th dimension in regard to DC's cosmology in the video. The thing is that those labels don't necessarily mean dimensional planes of existence. The 5th dimension, according to Batmite, is imagination. Mixie even backs this up when he tells the Justice League the exact same thing. This also completely falls apart when we consider what the 6th dimension is. Mixie describes the 6th dimension as existing above DC's multiverse and even above the source wall. He calls it a realm rather than directly a dimension as well. DC's multiverse contains structures like a 196,833 dimensional snowflake. Man, that's a mouthful. To a possibly infinite amount of dimensions, period. The 6th dimension is more of a name for the realm and exists beyond an absurd amount of dimensional spaces in the DC multiverse. This isn't to only correct what Groovy said, but to explain how the Speed Force can still be 5D if you don't buy Mixie's statement for some reason. It should be noted regardless that Wally would only hit a mark like this by channeling the full power of the Speed Force like he did against Cobalt Blue.
Sonic can actually affect a 6-dimensional plane of existence.
So remember when you talked about the Super Genesis Wave? Well, it turns out that the Super Genesis Wave not only erased the Chaos Force, but erased all of the echidnas that Ken Penders made, and that includes Aurora. Aurora is actually stated to be on a higher plane of existence, a dimension higher than the Chaos Force. As you can see in this scan right here, it mentions that the dimension that Knuckles is in is beyond time and space, and that dimension he's in is the Chaos Force. Now, above that, it says that he reaches an even higher plane of existence, which is where Aurora is. And because it's even higher, that means that it's on a 6-dimensional scale, because we know that the Chaos Force is 5D, so a dimension higher would make it 6D.
So yeah, Flash could hide in the 6-dimensional Speed Force, or go into that 6-dimensional plane, which I'm pretty sure it'd be better for him to go in the Speed Force plane, but either way, Sonic could still affect them with his Chaos Control, because as we just stated, it's on a 6-dimensional level. And later on in the comics, we find out that Sonic had actually warped something called the Dimensional Matrix, and could possibly put Sonic up as a 11th dimensional reality warper.
So, as you can see in the scan right here, Professor Vaughn is talking to Silver, and he mentions the Dimensional Matrix. The Dimensional Matrix is string theory terminology because you're talking about matrices. So this could potentially mean that it's on an 11 dimensional scale, like 10 to 11 dimensional scale.
Okay, this section is pretty much what motivated me to make a response in the first place, because there is so much wrong with the information used here. First of all, the place he's referring to is called the Virtual Zone. The Virtual Zone is not remotely transcendent to the Chaos Force. When Knuckles died, he first went to this place called the Next Evolution, where all the members of the Brotherhood of Guardians go after death. Rather than just simply die, they become astral beings on this spiritual plane. Knuckles would later be taken to this place called the Virtual Zone because he was chosen to ascend to the Chaos Force. The comic panel makes it explicitly clear that Knuckles transcending into the Chaos Force would be his final state too. The scan they bring up for the next evolution being 6-dimensional doesn't mention that the next evolution is higher than the Chaos Force either. They were just talking about this being above the whole general physical plane of existence, as this was all happening during the whole quantum dial thing with the Zorda. Basically, Knuckles was talking with Aurora about whether or not he can go back to the material plane or not. They also bring up the pretty infamous Dimensional Matrix statement for proof of 11th dimensional Archie Sonic. While the Dimensional Matrix is something that exists in string theory, there's no proof the idea that they're talking about in the comics even relates to the string theory interpretation. Dimensions in the sense of the Archie comics are referring to different universes rather than geometrical dimensions present in mathematics. This is further supported whenever Sonic talks about how Ifrit comes from a different dimension because of the Genesis portals too. So when this is brought up by Professor Von Schlimmer, he's referring to how the rips in the space-time continuum would destroy reality from the previous collapse of the multiverse. So I want to thank you all for watching this video, but before I close out, I have a couple of things to say. The first one is directed toward Groovy and Speedster, and I thought this was a cool idea, but I'd like to offer the opportunity to do some sort of live debate of sort, where one of us either records it, or we just do a live stream where we come together and talk about the topic of who would win. I thought this would be really cool because both of us have two videos on the topic, where one is a prediction and one is a debunk or a debunk on someone else's video. But if you're open towards this opportunity, my Discord handle is at the very top of my social media links, and it's also in the description. You can join my Discord server and then we could talk about it in DMs. I'd be down with that. The second is that I will be doing a Q&A. I will probably upload a video for it in a couple of days, but you'll see the rules and such whenever that video comes out. Anyway, I hope that you all enjoyed the video again. This is Plozible, I'm your host, closing out. Ciao.